Allie, are you ready? I'd like to welcome you, Dr. Allie Perkinson. This is a great
Yeah.
topic.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about unmasking. And yes, like I said, I don't think I'm going to be talking for exceptionally long. So there will definitely be time for questions, etc. So Connection Squared is the name of my private practice. And I talk a lot about neurodiverse identity, what that means, how many of us are then being led into burnout just with life, schooling, work, political sphere, right? Like I think a lot of people are feeling it. And then what it means to look like to be an autistic partnership, a neurodiverse couple. There's plenty of ways to talk about that. So hold on, I have to move our faces so I can read the screen. Perfect. Okay. So have you ever felt exhausted by the version of yourself you show the world? Yeah, I'm getting some hand nods. And I think when I talk to sometimes neurotypical people, they're like, yeah, I get that. That's like my work version sometimes. And when I talk to my neurodiverse people, they're like, it's my all the time version. Like, I only really get to be me maybe late at night, or if I've already maybe had an event go on that I think people give me more space. But a lot of times, I'm just trying to show the world the version I think I'm supposed to. And so I want you to hear, I hear that from a lot of my autistic, neurodiverse clients. I'll probably use that interchangeably. I am ADHD. I'm married to an autistic man. I consider myself neurodiverse. That's so what if I'm using that, that's what I'm referencing. But anyways, I just want to say you're not alone, and that's why I want to talk about it today. I think this unmasking process and burnout really go hand in hand a lot of times. Okay. So just a little bit about me. I'm a clinician. I specialize in adults and couples. And really one of my big things is I like to look at the psychology. So like understanding of your own neurology, right? What's going on with your nervous and sensory system, and then how to create more connection. Because I find many of my neurodiverse individuals are phenomenal partners, parents, teachers, community activists, but sometimes don't know how to connect that or have unfortunately had rejection that makes it hard to move forward with that. So yeah, I'm very passionate about helping people feel understood. Okay, so today we're going to talk about what is masking, some of the hidden costs of it, right? Because I think society kind of is pro masking in a lot of ways, and we don't always talk about the costs of doing that all the time. What the research is telling us, how it can affect your neurodiverse relationships, partnerships, and for people who weren't here in the beginning, I'm talking about a couple, but also I'm talking about friendships. This could be colleagues, this could be parent child, any relationship that you're in where one or two people would be considered neurodiverse. What the unmasking path kind of looks like, what are ways to even go about that, and then some reflection and integration. And sorry, I am from Jersey and I feel like I talk fast and with my hands, so I will make sure I'm conscious of that. All right. So, what is masking? It's an intelligent adaptation that can cost us everything sometimes, right? So we do it intelligently. We do it to be societally sound. We do it because we don't want to be rejected, right? So a lot of we masking comes out of a good place, right? But then it ends up costing our authenticity, our true understanding of ourselves. Maybe even, I have someone I'm working with now who realizes like they don't like their career at all. And they're really smart and they noticed that being smart got them accolades. And so they kind of just kept going with that. And they're a neurosurgeon, right? So they're being intelligent really got them far, but they're realizing they never sat and thought about what they like. And now they've had these years of schooling and they're trying to, figure out what they really want. So we're in an unmasking process. Um, and so it is, right? It's adapting to fit societal expectations, social expectations. We do tend to see this more in women because when you add in the societal expectation of women being more well behaved or having better social skills, we can see higher masking. But whatever gender, how someone is identifying, I still see masking very much impacting them. We learn early and may even have been taught by therapists, right? Scripts to fit in what are ways to fit in. We've seen TV shows that sort of show us this is the way to do it or not to do it. And so then we start to suppress our natural needs or responses. And one of those natural needs might be stimming, or I look up when I'm processing and I now know that, but everyone used to tell me that I was rolling my eyes. And so I would kind of like avoid conversation because I was like, oh, I don't want people to think I'm rolling my eyes, so I just won't engage. Um, we typically mask because we want to feel that we have belonging and that there's safety. And we're typically masking in something we might even like, meaning like a job we enjoy, or playing on a sports team, or being in theater. And we like these things, but then we start to learn the undercover social expectations within those. And that's when we may start trying to mask to feel belonging. And it does frequently become unconscious over time. This is a silly example, but I'm working with someone now who the other day was like, "Can I tell you something?" And I was like, "What?" She was like, "I hate Diet Coke. I just drank Diet Coke because everyone else did. And now it's really popular on TV." And she was like, "I hate it." And it becomes such a part of you because you do things that everyone else around you are doing. And we all do this to an extent regardless, right? There are some people in my life that I'm like, "Oh, I actually like some of the skills that you bring, and I would like to bring them into my life." But a lot of times it's the whole proximity and everyone else is doing it, so I'm going to take it on. And so they can become unconscious over time until, which I think many of you have experienced, you just have this like, oh, wait, I don't want to do that at all anymore. And you really sort of can move into like disgust over something, such as the Diet Coke. You really hit a moment of just, that is not working for me anymore. And again, it's not a failure. It's actually a very intelligent adaptation to get you to where you need to be in those moments. So myself, right? I mean, I'm literally a therapist. Didn't realize I was neurodivergent for years. I'm a people pleaser. I really like academia. I love working. And so I didn't realize that like one of my things that I used to mask or to be more societally accepted was performance, right? Like, so I'm going to perform and perform. I'm always going to be the one to take the project. I'll always do everything. And it wasn't until I really hit like burnout that I couldn't handle. And it wasn't just like, let's take a vacation burnout. It was true nervous system burnout that I started to really look at, wow, there are a lot of things I'm doing that I don't care about, but I feel like I'm supposed to. Um, and there were a lot of things also that I thought I had to do, a lot of shoulds that I kept putting effort into that I didn't need to either. I think a lot of us have those shoulds that can get sort of again paired in with our masking. So, and this is a big one, right? A lot of times when I'm working with people, one of the first things we talk about is actually like slowing down, seeing what our sensory system needs. And that can feel inherently wrong for people who are achievers, who are moving fast, who are scared to let walls down because then other stuff might come up, right? And so I want you to hear, I think that's a really common phenomenon of slowing down feels scary. And it typically is one of the first steps to really looking at like what's leading me into burnout, maybe what's some subconscious stuff to look at within masking. Okay, so one second. Um, our faces keep hitting the one part of the title I want to look at on my slide. So sorry about that. Okay, so why people mask? It's survival. We learn really young in some way, right? That what we're doing isn't working, either non-verbally or verbally, right? I really am quite amazed by how often I talk with clients, and some people objectively told them, you know, what you're doing is weird, but a lot of times it was just repeated nonverbal or lack of, right? I wasn't invited to the party, I didn't get picked for this thing, and I don't know why, but if I act more in this certain way, I get positively reinforced for it. That's where a lot of it comes from, right? Like, I don't want to feel the way I'm feeling. And so I got to figure out what feels better. And so we look at it for safety, right? We don't want to be rejected or ridiculed. A lot of times it's belonging. I want to feel like a part of my family, a part of my friend group. Um, because I think now children are starting to learn about neurodiversity a lot younger. There's a lot greater acceptance and inclusion. But when we were younger, I mean, I didn't know another ADHD person or autistic person or like I just didn't. So even if I wanted to find belonging with them, I didn't even know where to find them. And so it was hard. I think a lot of people had a mask to just find whatever group they could feel comfortable within. Um, this is a big one. It's unfortunate. I think it's still a big part of our society, right? The more neurotypical you can appear, it might serve you well in school or work. And so a lot of times people will sort of overperform initially to get the job or to go further in school, because they're seeing that gets rewarded. Now, I do think, and I'm just so grateful for all the autistic people who are starting to say, like, hey, I might not show up to work at the exact same time every day, but if you give me a project, I'm probably getting it done in 24 hours as opposed to people who are getting it done over a week, right? So I think we're redefining what success looks like from a neurodiverse brain, but I think initially people are looking at what are some of the neurotypical standards and how am I supposed to meet them? Um, and then invisibility, right? Being seen as different for a long time and still, right? I think we have a long way to go as society can be seen as a negative or a social cost. And so a lot of times we mask to try to feel that inclusion or to understand what that inclusion comes from. I hope you can all tell that I'm saying masking exists for a reason. I wish societally that wasn't the case, but I understand why it exists. I understand why people engage in it, and that there is my what I talk a lot with my clients about is like what are times we want to put on the mask and take off the mask with a little more intentionality? Meaning, like, maybe I get a job where majority of the time I do work from home, but I know I have to go in, once every other week. And on that day, I might need to do slightly more masking or some social preparation. And I know that going in. So it's a little bit more of that, like, I can choose how I'm going to step in and out. And then the other part of this, which we'll get into, is like, finding that authenticity that feels true to you, that really helps with not feeling like I need to be masking all the time. And that could look like joining a D&D group, watching anime, doing things that so many, I don't know if people have seen that trend. Like, if you liked horses when you were little, you're probably realizing you're autistic now. That's a big trend I'm seeing online. But like going and riding that horses or collecting My Little Pony because it feels genuine to you, those are other ways to feel like, okay, I'm relearning myself and embracing it. Okay, so many adults are learning they're autistic or ADHD later in life, and their relationships were often formed before that understanding. And masking helped them survive, but at a cost that compounds over decades. So I see this a lot. I see people that meet their partner or get their job, and then, we're talking 5, maybe 10 years in, maybe kids happen, promotions happen. They receive a diagnosis and they kind of realize like, the way they got there was through masking. And so there's a real unfear, right, of that unmasking. Can I maintain these things? What does that look like? And that's where we'll talk about this more, but it is important to have people in your life where you're talking about that you're doing this and you're sort of dipping your toe in and out of what feels good. Because sometimes we can understand that a behavior that we've learned was maybe an adaptation or a masked behavior, but we're not putting it in the category of like bad or I need to remove. Sometimes it's just identifying like, you know what? I don't love doing that, but it honestly works for me in this situation and I'm okay with it. And that's a conversation you can have with a partner or something, right? But so it's not, I never want someone to feel like I've got this diagnosis and now I need to unmask every part. That's scary. But I do love thinking about what are ways that you can have more authentic conversations, hobbies, values, that kind of stuff. Okay, what it actually looks like day to day. is maybe you're in a meeting and you're doing a lot of smiling and nodding while feeling internally overwhelmed. Probably because someone told you that you have to do that and it's socially appropriate, right? So if you're kind of thinking about that the whole time, you might end up, the cost is like you might end up feeling really exhausted or have resentment. Or I see this so often with clients, the anxiety replay later. Like, did I nod enough? Did I answer enough? And the other big cost is then I'm not really hearing what was supposed to be said in the meeting because I have the internal dialogue of like making sure that I smiled or nodded enough because someone told me I have to seem like more of a team player, right? And so these are ways that when we mask, we're losing sometimes these other opportunities to really be present in a conversation, maybe on a date, sharing opinions you think they want to hear, right? I think all of us do this initially in dating, neurotypical, neurodiverse. We want to put our best foot forward. But sometimes we can, we've learned there's a certain way to date. And so we act within those kind of rules. And it's more built on performance, not you. They're not realizing like, the real you actually wouldn't want to see a person 4 or 5 times a week, or the real you actually wouldn't want to text all day because that's overwhelming, or you want to text, you don't want to do phone calls, right? So there's ways sometimes we might early mask or respond to their behavior and not realize like at the cost of they're not really getting to know you. Um, with family, sometimes performing fine even when shutdown is happening. I see this a lot. A lot of later identified adults are getting diagnosed and their parents, I think from a kind place, they're not, they're not trying to be hurtful or saying stuff like, you seem fine. You don't look autistic. Like what do you mean you're having a shutdown? Like how, like, wouldn't you be, screaming or melting down, right? And I think a lot of us learn to kind of stay fine enough. Maybe we're having sensory overload. Maybe we're saying like, oh, I can't wait to get out of here. The smells, these people, this conversation, but we've learned to sort of engage enough and walk away. And so again, that's really unfortunate because people aren't really knowing you. And you can have loneliness inside of those relationships because you're not really able to talk about stuff that you want to talk about. I think one of the biggest challenges of masking is we are maybe taught like the things that we would want to discuss, other people don't want to, or they don't want to hear my opinion because I'll info dump and talk for too long. And so we kind of just end up mimicking another person. And again, then they're never really getting to know you. And then at work, right? So appearing calm and composed while internally panicking. I have a lot of clients that talk about like how they'll be in a meeting or a conversation and they look around and everyone seems fine, but they know, wait a second, you never actually give us a deadline. You didn't even really tell us what you need to do. Like these would actually be very helpful questions in this meeting, but they feel they can't say it and they're getting more upset because they're leaving something without information. They feel like they can't ask those questions. And so you kind of, one of the things that I think happens too is we erode our self-trust of like, well, if everyone else seems fine, shouldn't I be fine? Or maybe we got the information somewhere and I missed it. But I gotta say, my autistic clients, they have helped me so much with my onboarding because they'll say to me, hey, that's actually not in your paperwork. And I think it is, right? So their questions end up being so helpful for me. But I think, I'm sure people here have heard this before, like, you ask too many questions or like go find it here a lot of times people aren't patient and allow that time to ask questions and so we learn not to. So some of the hidden costs is it steals from your authenticity, but it's typically kind of like slow and quiet because you are getting some of that outward reinforcement, right? Of maybe more dates or the promotion at work. And these are great. I don't want anyone to think that those aren't phenomenal things. But what happens is the compound tends to happen. And that's where this like fallout that I'm seeing occur a lot with people between like mid 20s, early 40s. That does not have to be where you can be before or after for sure. But it's like that I did really well in school. I kind of did all the things. I had a syllabus. I knew what to do. and maybe I'm entering my a serious relationship or having a kid, and all these little things start to be in place, and then it's like I can't mask this high anymore. I need the downtime. I need to learn about my sensory system to feel better.
Ellie,
Yeah.
I had I guess question comment. I was holding my question, then you made a comment, and I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
gosh. When you made the statement that when you do these things, there is a reward, a reinforcement. And I think that in terms of society and culture is why we're reinforced in Western culture to be fake. You're reinforced. Like you
Yeah.
literally get rewards for
Yeah.
being not yourself and not being your authentic self. And
Mhm.
then if you are a neurodivergent person, it takes a toll on you in a different way. And of course, I always bring that back to that word that I don't like, which is compliance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's because it's like you said, it's you will get the reward, you will be reinforced, and that's unfortunate because that's the way some cultures are designed where
Yeah.
yeah, people don't want to know the truth, and like people don't want to know the truth. They don't want it, like people don't want to know the truth a lot of times. And so I think that's what's wonderful about neurodivergent individuals is the honesty, the authenticity. And I love that you're talking about giving space for that. And I'm going to mute myself now.
Oh, you're totally fine. I think, but to your point, that's one of the most confusing things, right? Because we look at like behavior 101. If my behavior is getting reinforced, I'm going to do more of it. It's a good thing, right? And so that is really confusing. Okay, I think I'm sharing where I left off. I think. Okay. Let's see. Yes. Okay. Continue to share. All right. So some of the costs, like I said, would be exhaustion, right? So that constant performance does drain the nervous system. That, monitoring of did I nod enough? Am I smiling enough? Did I ask enough questions? I mean, even as I'm saying it, right? You could see how that just can really over time feel exhausting. Am I not fidgeting? Maybe I should fidget less. And so eventually we're going to hit burnout. And burnout is not laziness. Burnout is not, I need 2 weeks off from vacation. It is true, my nervous system can't keep performing at this level. And then the other cost is identity loss. So confusion about who you are beneath the mask. Like, and I work a lot with clients on even like, what's the stuff you don't like? Because sometimes we got to start there. Like, yeah, you're like, I don't like Diet Coke, right? But like, what little simple things like, yeah, actually, I don't really like romantic comedies. I just watch them because everyone else does. And it's starting to really look at like, what things am I consuming day to day or in my environment that I don't like. And then the opposite of that, right, is figuring out like what stuff I do like. Again, some of us end up falling in these routines that we started younger. And because we're neurodivergent, we really like our routines once we have them, right? And we might not always check in to say, do I even still like doing this? Does this still feel good? And by routines, I mean anything, right? Like the time we're waking up, what we do for exercise, how we like to relax, the way we travel, what our house feels like. A lot of times when people realize that they're neurodivergent, one of the first things we talk about is your sensory system. Like, do you have overhead lights that are bothering you? Do you find the sound of your kids really challenging? It might not just be because you're burnt out from parents. It might be that you have sensory things at play. And let's do these tweaks to help bring down your nervous system a little bit. And then another big cost is isolation, right? So like it's that whole loneliness, even though you're around a bunch of people, like they know me, but they don't know the true me. And I really think that to me is the most heartbreaking part, I think, of masking is to be around people and them not really know who you are. And that's why I'm going to lead a little bit more into relationships because that's the beauty of a close relationship. This person knows who I am and loves me and is interested and curious about me. And I will say, look, I info dump so much. I know my husband could care less. He also knows I need to do it, and that to me is love, right? That makes me feel less isolated. I can listen to my podcast in the morning, tell him about them. He might ask me one question and I feel great right? So it can look different. It doesn't have to be the we have everything in common, but we're able to be our authentic selves. So, okay, so social maturity doesn't come from looking competent, right? It comes from risks, mistakes, messy honesty, and real emotional practice. A lot of times, though, I think in society too, we feel like, well, we don't want to rock the boat. We should just be as socially mature, socially acceptable. I'm definitely using quotation marks because I think we have very rigid and precise expectations about these that shouldn't exist. But so we try to figure this out as quick as possible. And that typically leads to masking, right? So we might we're gonna have rules about things, but not really let our feelings in there, right? So we're gonna follow social scripts, but we're not really thinking about our own emotional processing. Plus, let's say we have alexithymia and it takes us a second. So we learn some of these social scripts. And we learn to laugh at jokes, but we're not really getting the joke. Or, we're watching a TV show and everyone else is laughing at something. We just start laughing, but we don't really get it. And many times we're not taking the time to figure out why. We're not trying to learn or understand that, or even question, like, maybe I don't find it funny because I don't like it. We just are continuing to go. Another thing I know a lot of my high achieving, but also high masking individuals, they really try to avoid conflict at all costs. Because a lot of times they don't always have the emotional skills fully developed or an understanding of their own emotions to go through a process of conflict. And so they avoid it. And unfortunately, then their voice isn't getting heard. Sometimes they can have sort of that surface level friendship of like, I can remember your birthday and I might show up to an event, but I don't feel like I really know you because I don't really want to ask a lot of questions and you don't ask a lot of questions of me. I hear that a lot from my neurodivergent individuals. Like, what if I'm too much? What if I talk too much? What if my interests are too much? Or have they been told before they're too much? And I gotta say, we live in such a weird world right now of like little, TikTok clips and stuff. And I am really finding people are looking for a more deep conversation. I even saw a New York Times article about how annoying it is when people say, "Hi, how are you?" So I think people are starting to really like want more deep conversation. And so if anyone leaves with that, just know that there are people out there that they're wanting that. And then also, one of the things that happens when we're masking is we tend to present a false sense of competence or that we're really calm and composed. And so, again, we're not getting the opportunity to talk about how we really feel, or no one's knowing to even ask or check in to see if we're okay, right? Like, so I find, again, a lot of my neurodivergent individuals, their family or their coworkers, even their partners are shocked when they're stressed or not doing well because they're like, you haven't said anything. You seem great. You seem normal. We're really used to keeping that composure and it kind of blocks us from being able to talk to people about things. I've heard this from people before, like I'm good with people and I'm also so alone. Um, this is not from me. This is from Kristen Neff, who's also going to quote her again. But again, talking about how like I know how to be funny, warm, and charming, right? I kind of know how to um get people to like me. But I really think this is important. I spent so many years performing that I had no idea how for someone to actually see me. I lost track of my own preferences, my needs, and all of it. So that's this big thing again when we're looking at unmasking. It's really to sort of help with that loneliness feeling. And a lot of it comes back to our preferences and needs and being able to talk about them. Um, Masking teaches you how to survive and stay safe, not how to grow. I think that's a big one. It's not teaching you how to grow or become authentic. It's a safety mechanism. It's a coping mechanism. And that's why relationships can feel complicated, friendships can feel shallow, and intimacy can feel like a foreign language. So I really like this is a great article about her name is Lindsay, if anyone wants to look her up, Lindsay McGrath. but how it stunts our social maturity, meaning like it's just keeping us to, it's just helping us stay safe. But then when we get in these more intimate or deep relationships, we don't always have the skills because we've been just trying to survive. And so that's also a big part of unmasking is trying to learn our own emotional vocabulary, maybe learning some conflict strategies, ways to have healthy disagreement, ways to give opinions, all of that stuff is really important. Okay, so identity development often starts later for many neurodivergent individuals. And that's for a lot of what we're saying, meaning like I figured out early that I'm doing something different and I don't want to. I want to fit in. And so I sort of abandon identity and move right into that, like, I'm going to start masking and understanding. But it can be really scary when we get late identified, right? What I hear from a lot of people relief, right? Like, oh, okay, I really understand what's been going on all these years. Then I hear a decent amount of grief and anger. And then I hear this next stage of, well, crap, what am I supposed to do now? Who am I? Do I tell everyone that I'm autistic? Do I tell them that I have these needs? How do I do this, right? And so this unmasking process really begins, and it's a lot about what do I actually need and what feels authentic versus learned. And so some of my clients, we talk about phrases they say a lot, and I'll say like, is that a you thing or do you think you heard that somewhere? And a lot of times they can identify it right back to a TV show or a person, and we kind of say like, does that feel good? Do you want to keep saying the phrase? Because again, we don't have to take away everything. I don't want anyone to feel like they're starting at zero, but just checking in, like, is that something you want to keep using? And so this is big. Unmasking is not about removing protection. Like I just said, we're not ripping this mask off. It's a safety mechanism, right? It's still gonna be there when we need it, but it is about building safety where the mask isn't needed. And that should be hopefully in our home, in our family dynamics, in our relationships, in our friendships, like slowly building that emotional safety to be more you and then get positively reinforced for that, feeling like people get me. Okay. So again, burnout is not laziness, it's not depression. It is nervous system depletion when we're in neurodivergent burnout. And so it can look like chronic overwhelm. It can look like reduced capacity, shutdown or withdrawal, difficulty with everyday tasks, and loss of previously reliable skills. I think that's really the scariest one I see for so many clients of just like, I was able to do this and I literally can't. I also sometimes see with the reduced capacity, literally reduced words, like reduced ability to verbally initiate things. Um, so it's not the same as depression, right? That could also be at play. But meaning like it's not going to be episodical. There typically isn't like one event that's maybe bringing it on. Medication doesn't necessarily support burnout. It's not just lack of motivation, right? So I think when we think of burnout, we think of oh my gosh, words. Career burnout, right? Or, needing a vacation. It's not executive functioning limitations. However, it is going to be worse than burnout, your executive functions. It's not a character flaw, and it's not because you're not trying. Um, and many of my neurodivergent clients, and I'd be interested to see if other people feel this way, I mean, can be in burnout for years and not know what to call it, and it might get diagnosed as depression or it might get diagnosed as maybe trauma, and trauma is typically at play if you're neurodivergent, right? But maybe if we do some trauma work, that will lift it. And a lot of times there's this big underlying thing of I'm an autistic burnout, so everything we're trying to add on here, it can't really land because my nervous system's so depleted. Okay. Um, so this is a 2020 study found that it is a state of debilitating exhaustion, the loss of previously reliable skills, reduced tolerance for sensory input. So that's a big one. That's a big sign I see. So, maybe before certain sounds or tastes were irritating, but okay, right? Like they wouldn't, when you're in burnout, they can really spike to a next level of just visceral pain. And then I really like this, a mismatch between demands and what an autistic nervous system can sustainably meet. That's huge. I don't think society understands what an autistic nervous system can sustainably meet. I don't know if society understands what most nervous systems can meet anymore. Like our amount of accessibility we have to people right now with the internet, just all of the content that you can be receiving at any moment, especially if you are a person that likes to go into deep dives, which I do. You just have to watch, right? Because every time you're doing this, it's more on your nervous system. And then if you feel you have any form of PDA, that pervasive drive for autonomy, that also is really challenging because sometimes things that wouldn't be perceived as a demand to a different person is a demand for you, and it feels even more on your nervous system. So that's something to be aware of.
Allie, if I
Yeah,
can pause you
yeah.
for a minute, I think this is a great time to interject a question that came up to what you just said. How do we explain the loss of skills to neurotypical folks?
Mm.
Like you're explaining to your clients, they're learning to understand themselves. So how do they, the question he has is how do they communicate that to those who are either not understanding or clueless or just from their neurotypical lens?
I think that's a really good question. I almost
Mhm,
wonder if you're better off comparing it to something else that someone would
mhm,
relate to, right? So maybe saying for me, it feels like depression and high executive dysfunction, right? Or for me, it feels like I'm getting migraines daily because it can feel that debilitating, right? So
mhm.
like maybe comparing it to something else that a person may be able to understand. Or really go down back to like, there's actually research now that shows this, right? You could do a little bit of that. I still don't think, unfortunately, I think when you say burnout, people just don't respect it as something that really needs that much support.
And
Um,
and Allie, I will, to what you just said, they see it that way. They don't think it needs support because we live in a society that says push through it. We live in a society where women can have a baby and they have to go to work in 3 weeks or 6 weeks.
yeah,
So we live in a society that does not cater to taking care of your nervous system. And so that's probably part of the battle of getting neurotypicals to
yeah,
understand.
yeah.
But I like what you said about using an example. That's what I do with my parents to get them to understand their child's perspective is I use an example of when they have been burnout, which is usually after you just had a baby in 2 weeks, you're tired. So,
That's honestly not a
yeah,
bad because it is a
yeah.
very
Mhm.
like that deprivation of sleep. It's a very similar feeling. So I think that's yeah, I think that's smart. And I'm also looking at time. I will hurry it up a little. Sorry, everybody. Okay, so burnout cycle. Again, why rest alone isn't just enough, right? Because it's coming from masking and overextension. You got nervous system depletion. You're going into withdrawal. Oh, there's this other lethargy cycle, which is a lot of times where people end up thinking it's maybe just depression, because you have mood dips and nothing, you have a hard time getting stuff started. This is where I see the executive function really just like plummet. I'm working with someone right now where she literally like she wakes up every day and her house is kind of messy. She's trying to start her online business and it is like a real like just debilitating ability to move forward. And in her case, the only thing that's really been helping is body doubling, right? And so, but she will get in her head and say, I'm in my late 30s. How am I here? Right. And so that it does really help to have someone in your corner that understands like this is actually what's going on. This is burnout. These skills aren't gone forever, that kind of thing. Um, and sometimes, like we were just saying, society wants you to get better a lot faster. And so what you'll do is you'll take 2 weeks off and you'll feel a little bit better. But then you're going to go right back to masking and overextension and you're just not going to feel you're not going to feel restored. You're going to feel like, "Oh, I was doing the same thing I was doing before." So again, that is why it's really important to find a therapist, a group, a friend who you can talk to about this and sort of I talk to a lot of my clients as well about like when I have these little discoveries, writing them down. Like the Diet Coke or discovering that there are headphones I can put in so my kids, the sound of their talking, even though lovely, doesn't pierce my nervous system the same way, right? Like these little discoveries we can sometimes forget, but they really start to add up. Okay. Um, yeah, I think this big one for me is when I was in burnout, I was a lot more irritable, but I also just like couldn't. I I felt like like I was showing up to sessions, I was doing what I was supposed to do, but like I had no enthusiasm or the same like meaningful care I normally do. So, that might be another way to notice if something's happening for you. Like, have I lost whatever my version of excitement is, right? Not everyone expresses excitement the exact same way, but I knew that I was sort of in the like, almost like a robot scene of like I know like I'm doing the right things, but I'm not getting the feedback that I normally get from working with people that makes me happy, right? And so this is where that like learning and checking in with the emotions is important too, so you got to identify like, yeah, this is what's happening. Okay. Um, Autistic inertia, I'm sure I hope people have heard of this before. It's that like I'm stuck. I can't move forward. It can be cyclical, fatiguing, deeply tangled up with co-occurring conditions. Yeah, that's another thing worth mentioning. A lot of people get late identified and then they also realize that they have POTS or MCAS or chronic fatigue syndrome. And so there's a lot to pull apart to see that could be affecting your nervous system as well. Um, Repeated episodes of inertia may be a precursor to burnout itself, suggesting they are not separate problems but of the same cycle. And that's again that feeling of like I like I can't find my words, I can't move forward. And sometimes it's small, sometimes it could be like almost a whole day. But yeah, it's important to kind of notice like how often is that happening? Okay, so let's see. I was gonna go into odd ADHD stuff. I might keep going for time, but I do think it's important for people to just be aware of what are some common needs. And that when you're in burnout, your need intensifies, right? So again, this is being a little prescriptive. Not everyone is the same way, but a lot of times autistic individuals need predictability and routine. They want low sensory demand. They like sameness and structure. And then ADHD needs might be more of that novelty or task switching or external accountability, right? When you are in burnout, whatever version of that for you exists, it intensifies a lot. So you are going to want predictability and routine at a really high level, maybe to the point that you can't actually meet or your job or your partner can meet. And that's where sometimes it can really escalate into conflict for you. And you're like, I don't even know why I'm eating this so bad, but I'm eating it like viscerally and in an intense way. Or same with ADHD, like I am bouncing all over the place and not really satisfied by anything, and I'm not actually getting that dopamine feeling anywhere. That might be another indication you're in burnout.
And Allie,
Yeah.
just really quick, someone did say, please go and expand. And so I will say that even though we have a set time that we're here, it is recorded, and those that have to leave, we do sometimes have a little bit of time after if you need to go beyond.
Great. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
We don't want to miss
So
anything good.
So, neurodiverse relationships, right? I think it is really important to remember that, like, whenever you're in relationship or partnership, your brain is going to work differently. And so we have to learn each other's needs, triggers, feelings. And again, if one person is going in and the whole time just kind of been agreeable, when they start to unmask, sometimes there's this fear of like, is this person going to like that I have this need? And so there's a way to go about this like slowly and explain the things that you need and want. Um, just again, in neurodiverse relationships, we have different communication styles. We typically have different regulation styles and different intimacy styles. And so the goal would be that you are able to communicate in a way that your partner needs or understands. For example, I tend to speak slightly more loosely. I can be sarcastic, and I think that my husband is the semantics police, and I love him. And we've both started to learn that, like, if he's asking a clarifying question about, do I mean a few or a couple, I shouldn't take that as an offense. That's just he needs that information, right? Whereas I don't need to be as precise. Before, though, we would both be annoyed at each other. And so that's an example of starting to like unmask and being able to say like, oh, I do this because of this reason. And it's actually going to be really hard for me to change that behavior. So I'd rather you just have an understanding of where the behavior is coming from. Same with regulation, right? People need varying types of alone time. They need varying types of time together. I hope people have heard of the neurodiverse love languages. One of them, my favorite, is parallel play, which is literally like you're next to your partner or a friend and you might be engaged in different activities, but you're together. That could be very regulating for someone. For other people, it could be really regulating to play a game together, right? So, again, figuring that out. And then intimacy. This is a big one, right? Because intimacy for someone who's unmasking might just be like, hey, can I stim in front of you? Can I sort of tell you some of the like weird podcasts I listen to that I think are weird and don't talk to any? That's intimacy, right? And intimacy for another person might be, I don't know, doing a game about that's has questions to form connection, right? And I think it's okay if one person's like, I'm happy to do that with you, but it's not the easiest for me. And you can't be frustrated with me if I don't have an answer. I will say, I love those games. I created one of those games for neurodiverse couples, but I always think it's important to say, sometimes people don't have an answer to something, and that doesn't mean anything other than like, I don't really know. So that's sorry, my little caveat for those games. I think they could be pressure filled. Okay. So I think this is one a lot of the times, like, why don't you just tell me how you're feeling? Why didn't you just tell me that was hard for you? A lot of times, an autistic person doesn't even realize they're like withholding or that it is hard. They are just so used to doing the thing for the other person, right? So I think it is important as you begin to realize what you need that, again, if you can introduce it with a couples counselor, or sometimes like you may say, like, hey, I'm better off texting after a conversation. I'm realizing texting helps me, or I think it's better if we have certain times that we meet. These are accommodations you can absolutely ask for, and it's you starting to understand what works for you. So I work with some couples where the autistic part of them really wants to close the loop and finish the fight and complete the fight, right? And then maybe the ADHD part in someone else is like, I'm overstimulated and need to walk away from you. When two people understand what that is and what the needs are, it's a lot easier to create a bridge as opposed to one person just meeting someone else's need. So I think, again, the more we start to learn what works for us or why we're pushing for certain things, the easier it is to have a conversation. A lot of times, though, when we're kind of in high masking, we don't even know why we're doing the thing. We just end up doing it. Like we're looking to fix the fight, but we're not really checking in of like, why do I need to finish this right now? Um, so these are just some things, right? Instead of saying you should know, like you should know how I feel, right? Maybe we're teaching people to be able to say, what I need right now is reassurance, not solutions, right? So we're helping our partners. Um, Reacting without checking intent, right? So like a lot of times what we'll do in conversation is immediately like give someone a solution, and sometimes they're asking for space. If we don't need space or we don't or someone's not actually telling us that, we don't even know that's an option, right? So these are just ways once we start to realize our own neurodiversity, we can talk with people about ways to support conversation. Mind reading, I don't know. I don't think that works for any couple ever, right? But being able to say, I'm overwhelmed, I would prefer this. It's also okay, right? I feel like people don't think they're allowed to say this. I'm really overwhelmed. I love you, but I need to be alone. I'm really overwhelmed and I cannot get words out right now. can we come back to this? You can even text that. There's different ways to sort of convey what you need. Okay. So this is, I think, relevant to know. Unmasking can temporarily increase relational tension. It's not that you're doing something bad. It is that you two are learning, or you three, or whatever partnership I'm talking about, right? A family dynamic, you're learning each other differently. And so some things that maybe your partner didn't even know were at play are now becoming visible. And it doesn't mean that you're incompatible. It means that you probably need some support with these new behaviors. I think that is really important, though. Even unmasking, it doesn't always, it's not just relational tension, it could even be interpersonal tension because we're so used to maybe operating a certain way, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. Um, so this is just another important thing to think about with unmasking and burnout, right? We really want to look at ways to support people who have executive dysfunctions. This is 100% me. And so, can we offload a working memory task in any way? So we have a shared calendar invite so someone's not thinking about that all the time. Can we add structured systems to our house? Um, Body doubling is massive for a lot of couples. And it really is as simple as saying, like, hey, even if it doesn't make sense to you, can you just come sit with me while I do this thing? For a lot of people who don't really experience executive dysfunction, they don't know why body doubling is so helpful. But if you're able to verbalize and talk about how that's really helpful for you, that can be massive in supporting just reducing some of these executive functioning challenges. Okay, so we'll get into five. And then I'm so sorry, I'll have to hop off a little bit past the hour. So I want to give time for questions. I have to put my little man down for a nap. Okay. So, um, some intervention strategies are masking mapping. So, where do I feel like I'm performing, right? Really getting clear on, like, are there sort of high masking environments? What am I doing? Am I sort of forcing eye contact? Am I monitoring my tone? Do I do any scripting? Figuring out some low demand zones. So, creating rituals where masking is not expected. No pressure conversation time. So, I know this is a source of tension I see within families pretty often is that, like, when I come home from work or school or whatever, you're going to ask me, how are you? And a lot of times, most people are pretty tired and don't have words. So, being able to say, like, we're going to have a 20-minute grace period of some kind when we walk into the house, or you know what? Once we turn the TV on at night, we're not really going to talk about anything. And it just sort of is like, I can have a no pressure space. Um, Energy budgeting. So treat masking as a spending of social energy. Like, again, it's not going away. I just don't want people to have to be using it 24 hours a day, right? So if I'm gonna have a high mask weekend, such as I have a client, their best friend is getting married. They want to go to this wedding. It's not anything against this best friend. However, a wedding, there's a lot there. There's smells, small talk, all the stuff. So we've been talking about maybe the week before even taking off 2 days and kind of just sensory cocooning a little bit. So, like, getting ready for these environments. And then identity exploration. So, what feels most like me today? What am I doing less of than I used to before? Um, what do I want to learn? What am I interested in? So I will literally do nothing with this information, but I love animal attacks and like facts about animal attacks. I know it's a very random hyperfixation, but more recently I've been listening to podcasts about that as opposed to always listening to psychology podcasts because I feel like I'm supposed to, right? So just like, what do I want to learn more about? What am I interested in? That's a really good way to get some identity exploration. Okay. Okay. And so we talked about before, rest is not enough. Rest is great. If you can sleep, please sleep. But you want to reduce the load first. So, like, what are some things that you're like, all right, I have to high mask in these environments. Maybe it's going to work every day, and an accommodation is to work from home 2 times a week. We could try that, right? Let's add in some predictable sensory inputs. For some people, it's like their chair doesn't really feel good, or if they were able to put in headphones, any of that, it would make a big difference. Um, Adding in tiny moments of aliveness. So again, figuring out if there's any things that can be a short burst that feels good for you. Meaning like a warm drink, a short walk, jumping up and down, these little things that you know would help your sensory system. Reading a good book for 10 minutes. I feel like it's pretty hard to play a game or watch a video for just a short period, but something like that that you know would add a little. We want to add a little bit more of this like aliveness and joy. Um, Pace energy and not time. This one is huge. So as we age, our capacity tends to be affected regardless. But then as we start to go out of this like high masking, high achieving, we're going to start to learn our actual capacity. And this can be as simple as like, wow, I put 20 things on my to-do list every day, and that is not a realistic expectation for anyone. Like, why am I doing this to myself? What capacity do I really have? Do I work better morning or night? Do I need a nap midday? Like what capacity? So instead of looking at like calendar by time, what is my energy like? And what can I do? In a year, how many social things do I want to be doing? So in my house, Friday night is like pizza and a movie night. And like no one is coming over. I am not talking to anyone. I talk for a living. If there is a social event on Saturday, I will do it, but I can't have multiple ones. Like I just don't have the energy or capacity. Um so, and then accept the guilt and let it be. Guilt is going to happen as we change who we are and we discover who we are because we're sort of shedding some of these societal expectations. As we add more self-compassion and understanding, that will lower. Um, so, and recovery tends to be better when we're gently lowering demands and we're slowly adding back in activities that feel genuinely nourishing to our system. And again, that could be a walk. This seems really silly, but an activity that's genuinely nourishing for me is I bought one of those like fancy cappuccino machines and they make really fun sounds and I really like it. And I like pet my dog and pick my mug in the morning and this is like a 2-minute ritual and it really makes a difference. Because before, I think I would have held my phone and answered an email or done something, right? And so one of the demands you might want to look at is how much technological or verbal input you have going on in your life. Okay. And this is just a little bit more, we talked about this, like a lot of people are missed or misdiagnosed, so they don't even realize that what they're doing is masking. They're just like, this doesn't always feel right. There's cultural impacts, there are workplace expectations, there are gender expectations that make it more, it sort of forces masking more. Oh, wait. Sorry, everybody. Okay, we are going to skip that one. Okay. Okay, so I want to see if anyone has any questions.
That was very good, Ellie.
Oh, good. Well, thank you.
I'm going to quickly ask a question under pressure. It's like, when you see those public wedding, will you marry me? People say,
Mhm.
I feel like they're pressured to say yes. So I would love to have you on the podcast that I do, which is about shifting the narrative, because I think it's important to talk about this partnership and masking. So I will get in touch with you and ask you in written words, but I would love for this
Sounds
to
good.
be
But I'd be
talked
very
about.
excited too.
This
Yeah,
is
that works.
so good. It's so
Yeah.
good. I didn't see any new questions. I'm scanning again, but
Okay.
anyone can unmute and you can ask a question. Someone wants to know if slides will be
Oh, I
available, or
could
is
do
that
that.
something? Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
all
I'm
right.
fine with that. Yeah,
So
yeah.
we will
I'll
make
send those
sure
over
that that is
ASAP.
available. Perfect.
Yeah.
Lots of folks love the talk. I'm not sure if you can see the chat. It's sometimes hard to manage
Yes.
but yeah, I agree about the neurodivergent partners and couples and relationships. And I think one of the things I will really quick, just because I know we're on a time, but do you have a lot of clients? I work with parents, and so you work with the couple component, but the dynamic of non-autistic parent marrying undiagnosed autistic individual, they have autistic children, and now the autistic spouse recognizes their autism, but now it is a problem because the other person feels like they're parenting alone and managing three autistic. And so is that something that is common in your practice? Is that something that okay, is addressed? Thank you. I just
Yeah, for sure. No,
okay,
for
this is
sure. And
good.
I also think there's the one autistic partner. I don't know. I think it's very rare that we get married and we're both
Mhm.
neurotypical, right? I think there over time we realize like,
Yeah.
and maybe someone has like complex PTSD, but everyone that we typically have different
Mhm.
emotional and mental needs than we realize in initial partnership, and then they, come along.
Mhm.
Um, but I often do see that, and that's where that capacity model comes in, and also looking at like I do find a lot of my autistic spouses that sometimes aren't maybe aware of like emotional regulation with their kids are very aware of structure or are really good doers. And so maybe it's like, let's pull different things off of the neurotypical spouse's load and sort of, and then also set expectations for like, that might not come natural for them. It's not a skill they can't learn, but we can't expect that tomorrow. That's not fair.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I think has something to say.
Oh, had my mic on there. Yeah, great presentation. I'm in leadership and learned a lot, and I mentor leaders too. And one thing that's tough, especially for someone like me from software development background, we're used to that logical thinking, the all or nothing thinking. And best thing I've learned, it's a lot of gray areas. And one thing I've learned, if you go to people saying you have to do this, you have to do that, you end up being alone. And that's pretty hard too. So actually, what helped me, I studied influence and persuasion. Um, and I use a lot of those skills. And for me, it's a gray area because like what's going to cost me more energy in the long run, having like all these conflicts every day, that's just going to drain me and burn me out, or can I change, can I use my influence and persuasion skills, and it's different from manipulation and domination. Want to get that clear, but um, can I use those to kind of get along in the world better, which leads to more opportunities and then also leads to less stress long term. Had to learn to manage my energy the hard way. And I guess, do you have any advice for navigating those gray areas as someone who is that black and white thinker?
So one, I want to say like, thank you for kind of bringing up that persuasion because it is really helpful to find other communication sort of modalities, right? To be able to pull from because we do sometimes need a template to kind of pull from. It's just making sure it feels authentic to us. But so with the gray area, I know that's a tough one.
Yeah, very
I
tough.
think it's again, finding people that are willing to possibly make it black and white a little bit for you. So in the way sometimes I do that with my husband is I can tell he's like, what are you, where are we going with this? And so then I'll do a little bit of like, oh, okay, what I really need to know is this or this. And then all that other stuff that I'm talking about is like what I want to do, but what I need to do is this or this. So if people are willing to black and white it for you, I think that's really helpful. The other thing is maybe even calling it out, like, hey, this kind of feels like a gray area, and I just want to make sure like that's what we're doing. That's fine. I just want to make sure I'm not missing something. It
Yeah.
sounds like we're still exploring. We don't have it fully figured out. That's another way to say gray area, right? And seeing if making sure they're in agreement on that. But you're right, a lot of people live in gray. They do. Yeah.
And it's reinforced.
Yes.
Allie, I know that you have a little one. I remember those days.
Yeah.
I don't see any other questions or hands raised, so I want to thank you very much
Yeah, thank
for
you.
this presentation. This was really good, really, really
Oh,
good,
thank you.
really
I really
good.
appreciate that.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
really, really good. And I think that that Roger put links to how folks can connect with you on LinkedIn. And
Oh,
of
great.
course,
Okay.
yes, it is in the chat. So if you guys want to kind of scroll through the chat and look for the link, and the replay, of course, will be available when all of the details and technology has been worked out. This has been great.
Great.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you
Well,
so
I hope
much.
everyone has a great rest of their day.
We shall.
All right.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.